us now is Dave Levinthal. He is senior editor of Notice, News of the United States. Thank you so much for joining us, and good morning.
Good morning. My pleasure to be with you.
Well, the president said the war is nearing completion, but didn't offer anything new on a timeline or exit strategy. So does it seem like there's a clear end game? And secondly, what stood out to you about what we still don't know after his address?
There doesn't seem to be a clear end game, and if you took Donald Trump's speech in its entirety yesterday, there wasn't a whole lot new. In a way, it was kind of a cobbling together of different social media posts that he had made, different statements that he had made to reporters along the way, different statements that have come out of the White House, but nothing that would indicate when the end game was truly going to be near, when the Strait of Hormuz was going to be reopened, whether ground troops at any level, even special forces, would be part of the equation going forward in the 2 to 3 weeks that Donald Trump says this is going to continue onward. And meanwhile, markets here this morning have been reeling, and they don't seem to be pretty excited about what Donald Trump has said. The price of oil is going up, the stock market is going down, and there's a great deal of uncertainty that remains even after that primetime televised speech.
And Dave, you mentioned that uncertainty right there. So we want to know your credibility on some of the claims made last night, because there's still questions about Trump saying that Iran's military and nuclear capabilities are essentially crippled. But these questions from people are coming around the uranium stockpiles, the regime stability, and we're also seeing thousands of additional U.S. troops heading to the Middle East. So him saying that it's crippled, is that actually accurate?
Yeah, it's unclear. And that's something that Donald Trump is going to have to grapple with in a major way, because one of the key cornerstone bedrock reasons that Donald Trump offered at the outset of this war for going to war in the first place was to eliminate entirely Iran's nuclear capability. In his speech last night, Donald Trump said, well, all of this is buried, and there is nuclear dust, in his words, that exists. And we can't get to it, but we're going to monitor it by satellites. Well, on one hand, you could argue that, well, wasn't the United States already monitoring those situations by satellites, particularly in the aftermath of the bombing campaign that the United States had last year, along with Israel, that targeted nuclear sites throughout Iran? So a lot of people left scratching their heads here in Washington, D.C. over that statement and in what that actually means in reality. Would we potentially end this war with Iran without truly having confirmation that their nuclear capability was 100% destroyed?
And Dave, President Trump downplayed the United States' reliance on the Strait of Hormuz. But as we've seen globally, oil markets are reacting, and we are certainly feeling it at the gas pump. So how realistic is that argument, given how critical the passage is to the world's economy?
As much as Donald Trump would love to have everything here in the United States being built and manufactured, it is just a testament to the fact that the economy remains a global economy, and that what happens in the Persian Gulf, or what happens in Asia, or what happens in the United States will have reverberating effects all throughout the world. We saw this with Donald Trump's trade policies for sure, and we're seeing it now again with the situation in Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf. So bottom line is that even though the United States doesn't have a whole lot of imports coming in from Middle Eastern countries when it comes to oil and fossil fuels, many of the United States allies, particularly in Asia, absolutely do. And this is going to be a massive issue for them. And, if the economy catches a cold in Japan or South Korea or various other countries that the United States does have a lot of business with, that is absolutely going to have an effect in some form or fashion at some level here in the United States.
All right, a lot happening here and a lot of moving parts moving forward. All right, Dave Levinthal, we always appreciate your insight. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.